All right. Good morning. How you all doing? Karibuni sana. Welcome to the Afriforex daily analysis. It's about 10 minutes past the hour, but you're just in time for today's session. So hope you're well from whatever it is that you're joining us from. For the sake of guys who are new here, welcome to the Afriforex daily analysis, the home of pips. You can join us every morning from 9 a.m. in the morning with the same link that you did use to join us, and you will find us here Monday to Friday. Weekends, we're not here, but we're glad that you could join us today. And also remember, if you do miss out on anything, you can also catch up on our YouTube channel. You search for Afriforex. Also remember to give us a like and a subscribe when you're there. So John Bogo is my name. I'm a trader with Afriforex. Afriforex is a trading unit. We do have Mitch. He is here. He is working in the back office. So you remember, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them both on the Q&A section and also on the chat box. Mitch will be getting back to you, but I will also be looking at the questions in the Q&A section if there are any, but towards the tail end of this session. So we're going to jump straight into it. We'll start off, as always, by looking at the watch list, comparing what we have today in comparison to what we did have yesterday. So you can see the watch list right there, Thursday, the 17th of October. Can see just a couple of changes, not really that much. We do have the Australian dollar joining the buy side of things. So that's pretty much the only change that we do have for now. So we'll look at some of the AUD pairs that we did have yesterday that unfortunately did not make it to our watch list. So we do have the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. Now, for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that I had pointed out and also illustrations of what to expect. In the morning, price was somewhere within this region here, and I did point out that it was not a good time to actually look for those sells, and you clearly can see that the market really bounced off this region and continued to hold within this region for more or less the whole of yesterday. We did get some sort of a breach to the downside, but unfortunately we couldn't get a hold. So for this one, unfortunately, we can't say that there was any sell on it yesterday, and of course moving into today, not really something that we'll be focusing on. There were some AUD news events, which I will show you on the economic calendar, that came out, and you can see that the AUDs did end up getting some strength, some major pullbacks that have been coming in on them since early morning. So due to that, maybe we could see some strength coming in on the AUD. So for this one, this is the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. For this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten sells. Clearly can't see the three regions that I had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to expect. In the morning, price was here. I did point out there was a possibility price was going to come back in within this region. And I did have an illustration of what I was expecting, to possibly see. The market came back in, but unfortunately didn't quite do exactly what I wanted to see. But you can see that during the London session still, the market was somewhere down within some area of support. And that's why I pointed out that don't really look for the sells there. Price came back in, unfortunately shy of that region, came down, broke this region to the downside. And it seems that during the US session open at around 3, price had just broken this region to the downside. And you can see that the market pulled back in within there before coming down. Unless you're a real sniper on the charts, that one could have been a bit tricky, but you can see that the market did continue to rally down for pretty much the whole of the US session yesterday. So last but not least, we do have the Australian dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells, and you can clearly see the three regions that I had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to expect. So in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere here. So I pointed out, hopefully we did get the market coming back in within there, could have been good. Or possibly we did get the market coming down, possibly breaking beneath this region to the downside. Maybe we could have looked for the sells. But this one was a bit also tricky. It was a bit messy. You can see that the market broke to the downside, pulled back in within there. Unless you're really possibly trying to scalp, on this one, this breach was a bit too small. And you can see that the sellers did continue to rally down, but it seems that the main sellers did actually start off somewhere within this area right here. So it was also a bit of a tricky one, but at least not really something that we'll be trying to see whether we can end up trading today. But of course, we can end up, celebrating the fact that at least the other currency pairs did actually end up moving in, as much as the AUDs yesterday were a bit problematic. So we can end up looking at a couple of screenshots that we did get yesterday. So we can start off with this one from Alvin. Alvin, if you're here, shout out to you. Or if you're watching from YouTube, shout out to you. So this is on the euro against the US dollar. So I can see you had gotten a good buy on this one, somewhere within this region here. And can see that the market did actually end up going up in your favor, but it did end up resulting in a loss. So in terms of entry, this was very good. You definitely can't see there was a buyer's region here, but I think you did possibly end up mismanaging the situation a bit. And I think, of course, even having that emoji there maybe shows that you're a bit disappointed. But of course, when the market came in within this region, definitely your stop loss could have at least been at break even. When you did start to have this sort of a range happening within here, it meant that the sellers within this region were possibly holding the buyers in as much as they come in. Had the market possibly broken above this region to the upside and possibly held to the upside of this region, possibly this market would have gone up. But I think you give the market a bit too much of a chance. And also in terms of money management, at least had your stop loss been at break even, this would not have been a loss. But I know these sort of disappointing situations normally happen on the charts, especially when you're in profits, then you end up coming out with a loss. And I mean, that's a reason why we always make sure that our stop losses are break even when the market starts to move in our favor, so that at least, you know, a break even exit is much better than a loss any given day. So, but I'm sure a lesson learned on that one. So you paid for that lesson. So I'm sure that your trading is definitely going to be changing moving forward. But in terms of an attempt, that was very, very good. So keep up the good work. So moving on to another screenshot. This one is from Brazil. So I can see that you got a good buying opportunity on silver, somewhere within this region here. I don't know, this on the 15-minute time frame. So when the market pulled back in, quite an aggressive pullback, but you got the buy within there. Maybe you read this on a smaller time frame. Market was turning to the upside, which was good. And of course, can see that immediately the market started to move in your favor. Stop loss already at break even. You don't take any chances. And I can see that you take profit or somewhere within that region there. So shout out to you for that, Bravin. So last but not least, we did get a screenshot from Dan Pickett. So this is on the NAS 100. I know you're a real killer when it comes to the NAS 100. So I can see you got some buys within here and also another buy you had gotten down within this region and the market had come down. And I can see that your stop losses, I think for all your trades, somewhere within this region here, and I can see that you're targeting higher within this area here. I think this one possibly did end up hitting your take profit because I know that the NAS 100 did actually end up going up, but we'll end up having a look at it. But this is really good. So shout out to you and big up for that. And of course, keep up the good work. So remember, guys, if you do get any trades, whether good or bad, feel free to send them in to us. We're here to help. You know, make sure that you do use us as some sort of a resource. We'll give you the much needed advice that you need. That's why we are here. So make sure that you do send in your screenshots. Contact details should be there on the chat box. We'd be more than happy to see how best you can end up helping you. And of course, giving you that much needed shout out that you need. But also remember, you can use our number as an SOS in case you do have any issues with your trading. Feel free to reach out to us and we'll definitely see how best we can end up helping you. So shifting gears into matters today. So you can see the watch list right there. So the 17th of October, the good year of our Lord 2024. This is what we're going to be looking at. So hopefully you've taken note of that. And of course, today, in fact, you can end up looking at the economic calendar. There's already been quite a number of news events that have come out, which we have already factored into our analysis. So these are the AUDs that I was talking about that came out in the morning. You can see that the numbers are better than previous employment. Unemployment is less than last time. So that's a good thing. So definitely that's where the strength is coming in from on the AUDs. Some yen strength. Hopefully we should also end up seeing that moving into today as well. And of course, we already factored all the other news events that did end up happening yesterday. Now, this is going to be quite interesting for the euros. I think we'll end up seeing a lot of fireworks on the euros, especially considering the fact that the CPIs and the interest rates are coming out on the same day. We're having a chat with the team earlier and we're saying it's not very common. In fact, I don't even think we've ever seen that, where we have the CPIs and the interest rates coming out in one day. And you can see all these news events from around 11, or let's even say from around 12. You know, the news events are actually quantitative. coming down all the way till about 315. So I think we could end up getting a lot of movement on the euros. So let's see what happens on that one. And of course, you can't see the usual initial jobless claims, that normally come out every Thursday. We do have that as well. And you can see quite a number of high impact news events for the USD as well within that time. So I guess today we will possibly end up seeing a lot of moves on the charts. The economic calendar seems like it's pretty packed today. So the euros and the USD is really looking forward to seeing what does end up happening. So make sure that, of course, if the moves do end up happening, you catch them, but make sure that you also watch out for your risk. So I guess we can end up starting off with the yen pairs. So we'll mix and match them up with everything on the sell side, move on to the cards, the USDs, then we'll finish off with the AUDs, and of course, wrap things up with the indices and the commodities. So we'll start off with this one. This is the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. So for this one, let's even start off with what happened yesterday before we look at today. So yesterday, we're watching out for sells, and you can't see the three areas I had pointed out: aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative here. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this area right here. You can see that at around 9:10, price was here. I did point out that the best sells could have happened if price had come in within this region right here. And you can see that the market did push up, came back in within here. And you can see that I had illustrated that hopefully we could get the market maybe attempting to break to the upside. And of course, if we do get the market holding to the downside, then maybe we could have looked for that selling opportunity to come down. So this was a sell I did actually end up getting on this one. Unfortunately, I did finish off as well as I would have wanted, but nonetheless, it's still fine. I mean, we just take what the markets do end up giving us. So when the market was high up within there, I actually did get the sell, came down with it, but the market bounced off this region. At least I did manage the trade within here. But unfortunately, when the market pulled back in within this region right here with this pullback, unfortunately, I did end up getting stopped out. Then the market attempted to come down again, but it seems that the big sell did actually happen today, or more or less later yesterday. Unfortunately, I wasn't on the charts, but you can see that from around 8, when the market pulled back in within this region here, possibly reading this on a smaller time frame, and that's the big sell that I was actually wanting to get, but unfortunately, I didn't get that. But all in all, it's okay. Today is another day. Let's see what happens. So the sellers have really pushed to the downside. And you can see that the market has found some sort of support region, within this area here. So we will be waiting to see what does end up happening. Right now, in terms of looking for the sells, it's not a good idea. You could easily find yourself impeached, by those buyers who are sitting within that support region. So the best thing is to actually wait and see if you could get the market pulling back in. There's a possibility it could pull back in within here, then maybe come down. Reason being, if you look at this region here, especially on a bigger time frame, the market did actually break that region to the downside, during the Asian session, starting off from the US session, the Asian session coming down. So there's a possibility we could get a pullback, at least coming back in within this region right here. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed to see what happens. Of course, if that doesn't happen, then that means that the next best sell could be if the market breaks beneath this region to the downside. On the pullback, then we could possibly try and see whether we could get some selling opportunities. So do watch out for that. Watch out for the region at the top. In case the market comes in all the way till within that area, then at least you should also be ready for that. But if it breaks and holds above that area, then unfortunately there will be no trade. So the next one, this is the euro against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. So you clearly can see the three regions that I had pointed out. In the morning, price was here, and I pointed out it wasn't a good time to look for the sells. Clearly can't see why. So during the London session, the market did bounce off this area right here, came up back in within this region here. And you can see that during the US session, there was some sort of a fight that was going on within this region here. But you can see that the market quite tapped within this region, although it wasn't the clearest of opportunities, especially when the market came back in within this area here. But you can see, just like what we saw on the other yen, the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen, when the market tapped within this region at around maybe 7, 8, because it seems that that's when the markets did actually start to move to the downside. You can see that the market started off coming down, but those were not really the big boys. So it was a bit of a tricky situation, because you can even see that the first time when the sellers reacted, it seemed quite aggressive. The next time, they started off quite slowly. You didn't really have thought that would have come down, all the way till within this region, but somehow they've managed, to actually get till the bottom there. So for this one, these are the three areas we will be watching out for today. So hopefully you can end up taking note of them. Right now, you can see that the market is actually bouncing off this region. Let's see if we can get the sellers, or the buyers rather, pushing the market back till within this area. I think some really good sells could be somewhere within this area here. We could possibly get the market coming down. If this price is not good enough, then at least we do know that there's a possibility price can also come back in all the way to within that area. So do watch out for that. Of course, remember to watch out for the times that we do keep on pointing out, 10, 3, and 4:30. And of course, no matter what you do, make sure that you do trade the stop loss and stick within your risk parameters at all times. So the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. Clearly can't see the same areas that we did have, or we do have today, are the same ones that we had yesterday. So in the morning, price was here. I pointed out that this wasn't a good area to look for the selling opportunities unless the market broke to the downside or possibly came back in within here. But unfortunately, the market just couldn't get all the way to within this area here. So it seems that there's a serious fight that's going on between the buyers and the sellers within this region. And that's the reason why the market is actually moving sideways. So for this one, we will still be waiting to see whether we can get the market coming back in within here. Reason being, if you look at what's going on, it doesn't seem like the big sellers are quite in the market just yet. So that means that there's a possibility the market might need to tap in, maybe within this region right here. Maybe these sellers might actually end up lending them, a helping hand to possibly end up pushing the market to the downside. So let's see if we can possibly get the market tapping within here. Then maybe we could possibly end up getting something like that. And at least the sells higher up would be much better, even in terms of, how much range you do have to move to the downside. So let's see what happens on this one. Of course, the fight is still ensuing, but let's see, hopefully, if the buyers can possibly end up pushing the market into that region, then at least we'll try to see whether we can get some sells. So the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities as well. So you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. So in the morning, remember the CPIs for the GBP had just come out and the market had really come to the downside quite aggressively. And I pointed out there was caution. Definitely 95% of the traders across the world, were definitely looking for their selling opportunities right here. And I'm very sure yesterday, quite a number of them did actually end up sleeping hungry. So you can see that the market pulled back in within this region here. And you can see that the pullback happened, during the London session. So from 10, the market hit this region, came back in within here. I did point out that the best selling opportunities could have been somewhere within here. And you can see that within this region, the market did kind of slow down. Then after that, you can see that it did do the turnaround and actually come back to the downside. So for this one, these are the three areas we will be watching out for today. So we do have this conservative region at the bottom, semi-aggressive conservative region within there. We do have the aggressive somewhere within that area there. So let's see if we can either get the pullback coming in somewhere as close as possible within here. Possibly there's a good possibility that it could. I mean, the buyers reacted off here before. I mean, this time around, if you look at how the sellers have come down and how they came down yesterday, right now they've not really come down that aggressive. So there's a possibility the buyers within here can possibly still push the market to the upside. And you could find that the market could be back here, maybe like, at around 3, 4:30, and you could find maybe a proper sell possibly happening, because these sellers who are pushing the market down, these are not really the same sellers, who had pushed the market down. So I guess the big boy in terms of the sell is yet to quite show up. So you could find the market coming back in within here. You could even find it maybe even spiking higher than this. The big boys are constantly trying to get those good prices. So when that happens and the market comes back and actually holds within here, you could technically find that maybe that's what the market will need, possibly end up blasting through this region to the downside. So be a bit patient on this one. But also remember, in case the market breaks and holds beneath the conservative area, then at least on the pullback, you possibly could try and see whether you could get some selling opportunities. But of course, you really need to be very careful on those ones. So that's pretty much it in terms of the yen pairs. So we're going to move on to the Canadian dollar pairs, and we're going to mix and match them up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys, and you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to expect. So in the morning, price was here. So I had pointed out maybe price might come back in within here, but if it doesn't, then you'll have to wait and see if you can get a breach of this region to the upside and the pullback before you possibly could end up getting the buys. So you can see that this was during the US session. So remember the yellow as a now was somewhere within here. The market broke to the upside. The pullback was not really the clearest, maybe unless you're reading it on a smaller time frame. Then after that, you can see that the market did actually end up launching to the upside. So for this one, these are the three areas we will be watching out for. Let's see if we can get something much more clear to possibly end up jumping in on buys. So these are the three areas we will be watching out for. So right now, the market has just broken to the upside of this region right here. But considering the fact that it's just sitting more or less above this area right here, we're not too sure what could be up. There's definitely some sort of an SNR within here. So I can definitely even just put, this level right there. But the best game plan would be if the market can come back in somewhere within this region here. I think the best buying opportunities could possibly be somewhere within here. And at least that could be much better. The buys within this region could possibly end up giving issues because the range, if you're looking at this area right here coming up, it's only about 10 pips. So unless you're really scalping, I don't really think that could be something that might be worth your time and your money. Maybe unless if the market actually breaks above this region to the upside, at that point in time, maybe I could possibly end up trying to see whether I could get some buys. But trying to squeeze yourself within this region right here might not be worth it. Alternatively, what you could do, and the way I could also end up approaching this one is, if the market comes back in within here and I get a buy, then I should be able to blast through this region to the upside. At least if it blasts through to the upside of this blue SNR and actually holds to the upside of this area, then at least I know we're more or less out of the woods. But if the market comes up and actually holds to the downside within this area, then at that point in time, you're not safe. Maybe you're better off scratching or closing a good amount of your trade. In case the market breaks to the upside of this area and pulls back, then you can actually scale back in and actually continue moving with that particular trade. So this one is a bit of a tricky one, but my best bet is possibly somewhere within here. I'm really looking forward to seeing if we can get that pullback coming in there. I think that's where the best buying opportunities are possibly hiding. So the next one, this is the euro against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. You can clearly see the three areas right there that I had pointed out. So in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, the market was somewhere within this region here. And I had pointed out that hopefully we did get the pullback coming in, then possibly I think some good sells were hiding there. Unfortunately, the market just came shy of this area right here. At least we did have an idea that maybe price was going to come back in there. And you can see that the market just turned around, broke to the downside, pulled back in within here and continued to rally down on this one. So for this one, let's see if we could get the pullbacks coming in. You can see that this one really moved a lot. That means that the pullback could possibly also end up coming in quite deep. So there's a possibility you could find the market coming back in within here. Let's see what happens. Also remember that this region right here, when the market broke to the downside, in as much as there seems to be some sort of a pullback, this is on the 15-minute. But remember, this is not really something that's seen on the bigger time frame. When you look at the bigger time frame, the market technically just broke to the downside and moved down. So you could find that the market can also come back in within here. And remember, considering the fact that we have the CPIs and the interest rate decisions, for the euro, there's a possibility you can actually find the market spiking, possibly tapping within that region before maybe the sellers do actually end up pushing the market to the downside. But wait and see what happens. Also remember the region in the middle. I mean, if the buyers run out of steam within this area and you see signs of the sellers are wanting to come back in, then definitely you can also end up trying to see whether you can get your selling opportunities within that region. So the next Canadian dollar pair, this is the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten sells. These are the three areas I had pointed out where we could have looked for the sells. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. So the market did actually end up pulling back in within this region right here. You can see that the market tapped there. The big sellers showed up. The pullback did happen. This one was a very, very good opportunity. Unfortunately, I missed out on it. And you can see that after that, the sellers did actually end up pushing the market to the downside quite well. So for this one, for today, let's see what happens. Some sort of pullback seems to be starting to happen, but we will be waiting to see what happens. There's a possibility price could be coming back in somewhere as close as possible within there. If it does, I think some good sells could definitely be happening, somewhere within this region right here. Quite a number of regions within here where the market could also tap, but generally at least somewhere as close as possible within this region. Then at least we could possibly end up getting some good sells coming in, making sure that we're managing our trades within this region right here. So also remember the red SNR at the top, a bit of a long shot, but of course, if you're also following the story of what's happening on the bigger time frame, there is a region somewhere within this area right here when the market came down, and you can see that it broke to the downside quite aggressively. There's a possibility if prices within here are not good enough, then we could possibly be coming back in to retest that region before the sellers maybe attempt to have another go at it. So make sure that you watch out for those three areas right there. And that's pretty much it for the NZD card. So the last one on the card pairs is the Great British Pound against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're also trying to see whether we could have gotten sells in the same scenario today. So yesterday, these are the three areas that we had. Remember, after the CPIs came out, price was down here. I pointed out, wait and see if you could get the pullback. There was a possibility price was going to pull back in within there. Unfortunately, just came shy of that area there. And you can see the turnaround happening within here. So the bars went up. The big sellers did seem to somehow show up. And after that, the bars were really shut down. And you can see that the market did actually end up coming to the downside. So for this one, for today, we will be waiting to see what happens. There's a high probability price could be coming back in within that region. You can also see that on this one, the bars are now attempting to start to lift. So you can see a sequence of higher highs and higher lows starting to happen, which is good, which means that the pullback has begun. So let's just hope that the market or this price actually ends up getting somewhere as close as possible within here. But there's also a region somewhere within this area right here where you could find that maybe that's where the big boys are possibly waiting before they actually end up taking their next move. So let's wait and see what happens on this one, but definitely looking for the sells when the market is down here. I would advise you not to end up doing that. There's a high probability if you end up picking sells there, you could sleep hungry today. So that's pretty much it for the card pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the USD pairs. So let's see what they have to offer. So starting off with the US dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. So in the morning, when I'm looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. And I had pointed out maybe there was a possibility you could have just gotten the pullback coming in within here. But unfortunately, just came in within this region. I guess this price was good enough for the big boys. And you can see that the market did do some sort of a turnaround, went to the upside, broke to the upside, pulled back in within here. And you can see that the market has continued to rally up. So maybe some proper buys could have also happened within here. But unfortunately, at that time, round 7, I don't know if you guys were on the charts. I definitely wasn't. But you can generally see that the market took off to the upside of that region there. So for this one, for today, these are the three areas we will be watching out for to see what happens. So right now, we've just tapped within this region. We're attempting to break to the upside. Let's see what happens. If the market actually breaks and holds above here, then possibly you could look for the buys. I mean, if we get a repeat scenario of what happened within here, then we could possibly try to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. But I think the best buys are possibly somewhere within here. If you look at how the buyers are pushing up, it seems that they definitely need a fresh pair of legs. So that can only happen if the market does end up getting some sort of a pullback. Let them invite, some sellers to possibly end up coming in. Maybe there are too many people who are looking for buys, especially if the market is moving up. So maybe when the market pulls back in, I'm thinking within this region right here, especially if it pulls back, holds beneath there, then there's a possibility when the market comes back in within here, let's say like maybe at around 3, 4:30, I think some proper buys could possibly end up happening off this region right here. But let's wait and see what happens. Remember, if the market just breaks and holds above here, those type of scenarios can actually be a bit tricky, and they can end up being a trap for disaster. So you need to be very careful. The best breaches are when the market actually breaks very strongly above a region, then pulls back before it actually ends up moving. That way, at least it even gives you more room in terms of where you could target. Because you see, like for this one, even if you are to hit the buys here, you could hit the buys here, but immediately you're already encountering issues with the opposite party who are sitting right here. Maybe if this market were to go up a bit higher, it's okay. You don't really need to feel bad about not being on that trade. When the market pulls back, at least you have more room in terms of where you could possibly end up targeting. So just make sure that you factor that in, even as you end up looking for trades higher up within that region. So the next one, this is the euro against the US dollar. So for this one yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. We can't clearly see the 3 areas I had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to expect. So price was here. I had pointed out that there was a possibility price was going to come back in here. So the buyers attempted. They did actually end up showing up quite aggressively. I actually thought price was going to come in here. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And you can't see that the market came to the downside, broke to the downside, pulled back in within there and came down. So for this one, let's see if we can get a pullback happening. And also remember this being a euro, and we do have those CPIs and interest rate decisions that are going to be coming out later. There's a possibility you could find some spikes happening. So let's see what happens. Could find the price high up within that region there. But definitely right now, based on where price is, the best sells right now are definitely somewhere within this region. So you could find that maybe during the London session, we could be on the pullback phase. Then maybe during the US session, we could be somewhere within here, maybe somewhere within that region. Then you could get some proper selling opportunities happening. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But remember the red SNR, that's where we normally call it quits in case the market goes and holds above that region to the upside. So the next currency pair, this is the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. And you can't clearly see the 3 regions right there that I have pointed out. And also an illustration of what to expect. In the morning, price was here. So you can see that at around 9:10, when we're doing these illustrations, I pointed out we could possibly wait for the pullback to come back in within here. The market did exactly that. So it came back in, broke to the upside, came back in and actually held, did here to actually end up coming down. Fortunately, also missed out on this one. This one was quite similar to the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar, because you can see they have some sort of similarities, especially on how the markets did end up turning around. So for this one, let's see if maybe we will be, or I will be lucky today. Hopefully some of you possibly did end up grabbing this trade. But let's see what happens within these same 3 areas that we're watching out for. So right now, the market seems like it's getting into some sort of range within here. You know, the market playing a bit of ping pong between this level here and somewhere within here. And that being the case, that should automatically tell you that the best sells are high up within here. So don't really look for the sells in between, because your risk to reward is going to be off. Remember, your stops will possibly still need to be high up within there. So this might not give you a proper risk to reward. So try to get the sells, hopefully somewhere as close as possible within here. Or at least if you can't get the sells there, let the market come down, break beneath this region. So the game plan is exactly the same as what we had yesterday. In fact, it seems that price is more or less within the same region where it was yesterday. So it's either one of these 2 scenarios right here. So hopefully you have taken note of that. So last but not least, for the USDs, we do have the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. You can't clearly see the 3 areas I had pointed out. So even for this one, when the CPIs came out, price came down all the way till within this region. I pointed out, don't look for the sells within this region right here. Wait for the pullback. The pullback came in, just came shy of that area there, but you can't see the turnaround within here. The buyers went up, sellers shut them down. After that, the buyer struggled, and you can see that this one also did end up giving a good opportunity from around 430 or thereabout coming down, for the sellers to actually end up challenging their previous record, which was down here. And that's where you can see that the market is really challenging. They're really knocking on that support region to possibly try to see whether they could actually end up breaking it to the downside. So let's see what happens on this one. But generally, in terms of where the price is right now, it's not the best of areas for you to look for your selling opportunity. You can see that there's a support region there. Let's see if we can get the market coming up. Maybe the market might come back in within here. I mean, if the buyers really do end up struggling, there's also a region somewhere within this area here, because you can see there's some sort of a support and resistance area within here. So even if the market doesn't come in all the way to within there, at least hopefully trying to see whether you could time yourselves within here is much better than actually looking for yourselves right now, where the price is right now. So remember, for this one, we do need a breach to the downside. If we get that, then at least we could try to see whether we could get some sales on the pullback. So watch out for that. The top region right there, bit of a long shot, but I mean, if the market or the big boys do actually meet that price, then at least we will also be ready for that. So that's pretty much it in terms of the USDs. So right now we're going to move on to the AUD pairs. We're going to mix and match them up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So this is a new entrant on our watch list. So we'll be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. These are the three areas I will be watching out to see what does end up happening. You can see the strength coming in on the AUD. After those news events, the unemployment and employment news events came out, the market really rallied up to the upside quite aggressively. But you can see that within this region, definitely these big boys who had come up found some sellers there, and that's the reason why the market is holding. So that means that it's either the market breaks to the upside of this region right here, and at least that will tell me that the big boys are back, the market pulls back in within there, and I could look for the buys there. Alternatively, if the market comes back in within this region here, because there's a possibility you can see that the market broke to the upside of this area, there wasn't a retest. So most probably price can come back in within this region here. So watch out for that. And of course, the last area is definitely here where we started the push of the buyers going up. If the market breaks beneath that region to the downside, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us. So the next one, this is the euro against the Australian dollar. So this is also a new entrant on our watch list. So we will be trying to see whether we can get some selling opportunities. Don't chase the sales now. Wait and see if we could get the pullback coming in. The pullback has started, which is good. So let's see if the market actually comes back in within this region and actually sets itself up. And hopefully those news events, especially for the interest rates and the CPIs, do end up coming out negative. That would be good. Hopefully we could end up getting this one coming down, possibly breaking this region to the downside, and could possibly end up getting some good sales on it. So do watch out for that. But also remember this region at the top right there, there's also a possibility price can also come back in within that region. If it does, then at least you should also be ready for that as well. But generally, if the market breaks above this region to the upside, remember this is where the big sellers who are pushing the market right now are actually sitting. So if those guys are dethroned, then you have no option to stop, but to stop looking for selling opportunities as well, because these guys are your safety net. The moment they are taken out, then that means that you should also end up falling back in terms of looking for your sales. So make sure that you also do factor that in. So moving on into the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. So this is also a new entrant on our watch list. So we will be trying to see whether we can end up getting some buying opportunities on this one. So watch out for these three areas right here. So these are the main three areas we will be watching out for. Right now, the price has come back in within here. But you can see that the sellers are also quite adamant, especially in terms of how they've come in. This is a bit aggressive. So there's a possibility you could find that they might attempt to break this region to the downside. But at least if we do see a sign, the big boys coming in and the market holding within here, at that point in time, if you do actually jump in on your buys, that buy will be quite safe for you, I would say. And of course, it will give you an idea of where you can end up putting your stop loss. Because one reason why many people don't trade with a stop loss, and I've said this many times in this forum before, is because they can't clearly see a region. Like right now, if you have to look for the buys, the main question that you should be asking yourself is where you're going to put your stop loss. You can't see that this move started off from all the way down here, and you can't generally have your stop loss all the way down within these regions. That doesn't make sense. But at least if you do end up getting some spikes and some probes within this region right here, and the market holds to the upside, at least that will give you some clear indication of where you can actually end up putting your stop loss. So wait and see what happens. Remember, when it comes to trading, timing and direction are two different things. You can get the direction correct, but if you miss the timing, then you could also end up getting stopped out. So let's see what happens. There are definitely some guys who are hitting buys here, especially considering the fact that the market went up, broke this region to the upside. It's come back in within here, which is good. They could hit the buys there, put their stop loss there. The market comes down, stops them out, then comes back in and actually holds within here. So you see, and possibly ends up moving to the upside. So it's not that their direction is wrong, it's just that their timing is off. They were in too early. So make sure that you also don't end up getting a premature entry on this one. You possibly will end up getting stopped out. Now, there's also this region, somewhere within this area right here that we're watching out for. Although I know this one will possibly end up making a lot more sense for the guys who've done the one-on-one. But the market has come down, come up. Right now, there's this pullback that's coming in, but there's a possibility, especially for the guys who are real snipers on the charts, there is a possibility that the market could possibly be tapping back in within this region right here. So in case that does end up happening, then make sure that you also are possibly watching out for that to see what does end up happening. But right now, of course, since the market is within here, that's exactly where our area of interest and our eyes should definitely be within this region right here. So let's see what happens on that one. And that's pretty much it for AUD and ZD. So last but not least on the currency pairs, we do have the Great British Pound against the Australian dollar. So this one also a new entrant on our watch list, and we will be trying to see whether we can get some selling opportunities. So do watch out for these three areas right here. So right now the market is on the pullback phase. Let's see what happens. At least we're getting that sequence of higher highs and higher lows. Let's see where they do end up running out. At least if it does end up running out within this region, then we could possibly try and get some sells. Then these sellers could be attempting to possibly end up come and break their previous record. There's a possibility if they do break, they could end up going a bit lower. Because looking at the market structure here, for the guys who normally look at chart patterns, you can see that the market is in some sort of downward channel. So you could possibly find that, when the market does actually end up breaking to the downside of this region, it could possibly end up going a bit lower. I know we don't really focus much on chart patterns, but it's not that we overlook them. Some of these things, we normally see them subconsciously also being on the charts for long. So you could find that the market could come back in within this region, come in maybe just slightly lower than this region, the same thing it did here. But generally, you can't see that every time the sellers step in. The last two instances we've had, the sellers really step in hard. The buyers come in slowly, the sellers step in hard. Right now, the buyers can't see that they're coming in slow. So the next move of the sellers coming in might also be quite aggressive. But generally, at least it's somewhere within this region right here. So in terms of the chart pattern, the SNR, they end up agreeing. So that's what we end up calling confluence. When things end up aligning and the stars are aligning. So let's see what happens on this one. But of course, remember the red SNR, that's going to be the last region where we will be trying to see whether we can get those aggressive and last selling opportunities. So that's pretty much it in terms of all the currency pairs. So hopefully you've taken note of everything we discussed there. So we're going to move on to the indices and the commodities. So you can see that these ones haven't changed. So we'll start off with the indices. So we'll start off with the NAS 100. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the three areas right there that I had pointed out. And in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. And I was expecting maybe we could have gotten maybe that last spike coming in. But generally, you can see that the market just held within this region. It was only up until maybe around 4:30. That's when the market did actually end up pushing to the downside quite aggressively, coming back in within this region right here. So this one, at least the sales did work. But of course, the indices and the commodities, the opportunities tend to work a lot, especially during the US session. Of course, they're pegged on the USD, so it's also something that's not very surprising. But generally, you can't see that the market came within this region. The sellers had come down the previous day, but unfortunately, they just couldn't break beneath this region to the downside. And you can't see that the market technically held above this area. To the upside, the buyers came in quite aggressive. You can't see that the sellers have slowed down. And right now, you can't see that the market has come up quite aggressively. So let's see what happens. This is generally the area that, where we end up calling it quits in terms of looking for selling opportunities. But there's also a reason why the market is coming back in within that region. So when the market broke to the downside, there was this area where the market didn't pull back. So this could technically be, maybe the retest possibly coming in. It's a bit worrying, to see how the buyers are coming in, because that's also quite aggressive. But of course, we will have to wait and see whether we can end up getting a slowdown. These buyers coming in within here. I mean, the market can also even maybe break to the upside, but just because it breaks to the upside doesn't mean that we can actually start to look for the buys or that this level has been taken out. Sometimes the market needs to probe within regions, for the opposite party to actually end up slowing down, especially looking at how these buyers have come in. There is a possibility they could possibly end up spiking to the upside. But generally, we want to see the sellers step back in and maybe the market holding within this region. If that happens, and watching out for the times, 3, 4:30, then maybe you could find some selling opportunities happening. So that's one scenario. Of course, the other scenario is if the market breaks to the upside, the market pulls back in within here and actually holds to the upside of this area, and maybe you see some attempts, maybe probes to the downside, where the sellers actually attempt to break beneath this region to the downside, but they're unsuccessful. Then at that point in time, then I guess these buyers will possibly end up having a field day, and you could find the market coming to the upside. So let's just wait and see what happens. We're within catch-22 situation, so we'll have to wait and see what the big boys end up doing within that level. So the next one, this is the Dow Jones. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You clearly can't see the 3 areas that I had pointed out within these areas right here. And in the morning price was here. I did point out that don't really end up looking for the sells up until maybe if the market could break beneath this region to the downside, or maybe if the buyers did end up pushing the market back within this area right here, and maybe if we did get maybe some sort of a slowdown and something we could read, and I had illustrated that with this here, then maybe we could have looked for the sells. So you clearly can't see the sells within here were not working, or they could not have worked. We're within a support region. We didn't know how aggressive the buyers were going to react, but you can generally see that they reacted off this region quite aggressively. There was no reaction off here. And also when the market came in within here, it did seem like it was going to slow down, but unfortunately the sellers were just not able, to withstand the heat, because the buyers really had come up quite aggressively and they stepped up within that place. So for this one, it's a bit of a tricky one. We could have looked for the buys, of course, considering the fact that the market did actually end up breaking this region to the upside. But when we ended up looking at the story of what's happening on the 1-hour time frame, then this is where we did end up making our decision from, because you could easily end up starting to look for buys within here, but sellers are sitting here. And also, if you look at how the market has been coming up within this region right here, you can see that the market went up aggressive, but the sellers also pushed the market quite aggressively back within this region here. The buyers have pushed up. If we do end up getting into some sort of a range, then you could find the sells coming down off this area right here. And you can't ignore the fact that this seller has actually stepped back in quite aggressively. So for this one, instead of looking for the buys, especially when the market is somewhere within here and we're possibly getting into a range, you're better off maybe looking for the buys, especially if the market can actually break above this region to the upside. So that's the reason why we have those levels as they are. So let's see what happens. Of course, this one is also a bit tricky, considering the fact that, the market has really never been here. So we are making the adjustments as we're moving along. So definitely there are new support and resistance levels that are being created. So, we just have to end up following the story of what's going on within this area here. So let's see what happens. There's also a possibility you could find that the market, so I hope you've gotten the whole idea of, at least you could look for the buys if we break above here. But generally, let's see what happens, especially if the market comes in within this region, then these sellers within here do end up reacting and do end up getting a hold. There's a possibility you could find the market coming back in within these regions here. especially guys who've done the one-on-one and the sniper, you should be able to understand why there's a possibility price could be coming back in within that region there, because the story seems quite clear, especially on the 1 hour time frame. If you look at how the buyers have gone up, sellers have come down, come back in within this region, you should know why it's come back in within there. And also considering the fact that the sellers came down and the buyers have come up aggressive, then there's a possibility price could also be coming back in within this region here. So right now, let's try focus on sells. But of course, if we do break above this region, I guess that's going to be the defining point, not the one that we did have yesterday, because you could find yourself bouncing off those regions at the top right there and possibly get into a vicious fight, with the sellers who are sitting high up within that region. So moving on into the next one, this is silver. Now for silver yesterday, the buyers was to try and see whether we could have gotten some buys. So you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. So aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative. Here in the morning, price was somewhere within this area here, breaking to the upside. So we're waiting for that pullback to come in. It did, although it was quite late. Then after that, it's like the buyers were just not quite there. So you can see the sellers came down quite aggressively. And you can also see during the Asian session, they're still in the game and they're quite fighting quite a lot. So for this one, we've adjusted the levels, of course, based on what the story of price is telling us. So right now, this one is also testing that region right there, but the buyers, for as long as we're holding above the red scenarios to look for buys, the sellers have come down. You can see some sign of some buyers starting to show up within this area right here. So let's see what happens on the next push. Hopefully, if the market attempts to break to the downside again and holds above here, I think we should be good to go in terms of buys. In case it breaks and holds beneath this region to the downside, then I think at that point in time, we could start to look for selling opportunities. So do watch out for that. I know the levels are a bit compressed on this one, but remember, it's we don't dictate the levels. It's purely based on what we end up seeing on the charts, and we're just keenly following the story of what's going on. So last but not least, we do have gold. So for gold yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten buys. Similar situation today. You can clearly see the three areas right there that I had pointed out. So in the morning, price was here. I had pointed out, hopefully we could get a pullback coming in within here. And you can see that the market continued to rally up during the London session, but during the US session, the market still came back in within this region here, although a bit later, because you can see that from around 7, 8. I don't know why most charts yesterday were moving around that time, but you can see that the buys, the proper buys, did actually end up taking off from within that time. So for this one, let's see what happens. You can see that the market is currently testing the high. I know that yesterday, I think Alandono had asked a question about this one being at the high and testing the high. And you can see that the high was tested. I think if you end up going to the 4-hour time frame, you will see that the buyers are really knocking on that resistance area at the top right there. So let's see what happens. If the pressure becomes too much, there's a possibility you could find that the market could be breaking above this region to the upside on the pullback. Definitely, you could try and see whether you could get some buys. But considering the fact that the sellers have reacted off that region before, you still need to give them the benefit of doubt. I mean, if you look at what's happening on the 15, the buyers went up, sellers came down. This is not such a small reaction. And you can see that the buyers went up again, and you can still see that the sellers are still quite adamant within this area right here. So it's either the market breaks to the upside of this area right here, and at least if that does end up happening, then we could be heading to maybe 2,700 or whatever. We don't know how far the big boys could actually push the market. Alternatively, but I think the best buying opportunities are hopefully the market can hold within there and the market can actually come back to the downside. I think the best buys could possibly end up being somewhere within this region right here, based on what we're reading, because you can see that the market also seems like it's bouncing off these two areas right here. So that being the case, the best buys are definitely down within this region here. So watch out for that, but also remember the red SNR at the bottom. I mean, if the market comes in within that region, then you still can look for the buys, but remember that those are going to be the last area, or that's the last area where we will be trying to see whether we can get those aggressive buying opportunities. So I guess that's pretty much it in terms of everything. So hopefully you've taken note of everything we've discussed. I think we can end up looking at the Q&A real quick. So I just see Alan Rono there saying hi, John. Thanks a lot. Karibu sana, Alan. Always good to see you here. I'm not really seeing any more questions, which is perfectly fine. So I guess we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for making the time to be here with us. We're always grateful. There'll be no fun presenting these things to ourselves. And of course, we hope that you're achieving as much as possible in terms of your trading. If you're not, feel free to reach out to us. Our wise man said, it's good to learn from your experience, but it's even better to end up learning from someone else's experience. We have the experience, so feel free to reach out to us in case you're struggling, and we'll see how best we can end up helping you. So with that, happy trading, guys, and bye for now. May the peace be with you. God bless.